Human sensation is derived merely from sudden contrasts. When I touched the hot stove as a naive child, I immediately jerked my hand backwards. My reflex was triggered by the sudden contrast of a comparatively neutral temperature with one similar to the depths of hell. When I scraped my knee from falling off a bike, the pain was triggered by the contrast of a comparatively neutral pressure with the force of discontinuous pavement chunks grinding into my skin. When I woke up this morning, my discomfort was derived from the complete silence compared to the hustle and bustle of my urban livelihood. For the first time in my life, the deafening silence drifted me out of my slumber. As an individual who requires white noise to receive even a hint of sleep, the lack thereof dragged me away from any peaceful dreams I must have had. My bed was the same. My dresser was the same. My pajamas were the same. My desk was the same. Even my computer was left in the same position as it had been last night and every day before it. But even then, something was not right. Upon peeling my blinds away from my bedside window, I discovered the root of my discomfort. The outside, though structurally identical, lacked a single person. It was as if they had vanished. The nearby cafe had its chairs positioned as if someone was once there, and half-eaten pastries lay disorderly around the outdoor tables. Cars littered the streets in typical driving positions, albeit their engines seemed to have turned off. Curiously, partially melted ice cream cones lay haphazardly, attempting to sink into the impermeable sidewalk pavement. Wait, Mittens. Mittens isn't here. My lovely kitten was not snuggled near the foot of my bed, as had been the norm since I first adopted her. I sprung out of bed and frantically tore apart my house. Mittens! Mittens! I yelled repeatedly. Alas, I had to come to terms with the conclusion that she was no longer in the apartment. I don't know how she could have possibly escaped, as during my frantic search I found that all exterior windows and doors were not only closed, but locked as usual. It was only when I burrowed my head into my hands in a fit of despair that I came to a realization. Not only were the noises of the city gone, but so were the cries of birds. Had it been yesterday, I would have imagined that the pigeons would be second loudest only to the city. If not faced with the competitor of human machinery, the greedy pigeons would bicker and fight to receive any scrap of food they could find. Yet, not a single creature was visible through my windows, even near the unoccupied clumps of appetizing food. Before making rash decisions, I scoured through my phone to identify the source of the sudden peculiarity. Surprisingly, I could still access the internet, but I could find no mention of my situation. There was even a live broadcast of a festival happening in the park right in front of my apartment. Children ran around, shooting each other with water guns, while moms and dads congregated in large groups, drinking cheap beer and complaining about the overpriced hot dogs. Yet, they obviously weren't there before my own eyes. Any attempts to call or message friends and family failed. Messages would fail to send, and calls would go to voicemail. If my, albeit annoying, best friend Marlon was here, he'd ask me why I had a reverse child lock on my phone. Out of foolish necessity, I creeped out of the door into the hallway, but I'm glad to say I did have the sense to bring my titanium baseball bat with me despite my momentary irrationality. As unfortunately expected, the hallways were deserted. Although, the electrical grid appeared to be at least somewhat intact, as the neon emergency exit sign remained illuminated. Still, I'd rather not risk my chances on the elevator. In the apartment lobby, the only indication of recent human habitation was a disposable coffee cup that was half empty. At first, I assumed I was viewing an illusion, but closer observation revealed a strange truth. The coffee was still producing steam. Just like the unmelted ice cream I saw from above, little time had passed since these food items were produced. Wandering the liminal streets was nauseating. After each corner, I expected to stumble upon someone or something. I'd given up on running into another person, though I still hoped for a miracle, and even the lack of annoyances from insects numbed my sensation. By the way, I take back my boast about being still having sense in me. Out of desperation, I swung my bat at a wasp or hornet's nest. Thankfully, I didn't suffer from the assumed outcome. Throughout my journey, the loudest noise became the vibration notifications of Google Maps. It felt wrong to turn on the voice commands, as the sudden production of noise would likely produce the most excruciating contrast I have known to that point. I was walking in the direction of an opera house, which was positioned just on the outskirts of the truly urban district of my city. After each block, I memorized the route that I had taken, tracing my finger back to my apartment, should I need to make a hasty retreat. 2 down, 1 to the right, 3 down, 2 to the left, 2 down, 1 to the left, I muttered while tracing my finger. Just as I traced my finger to approximately 3 blocks from my apartment, my phone suddenly shut off. Now, I was in total silence. A mechanical were pierced through the auditory void as a chain with a hook shot out from a convenience store window. Glass panes shattered as the hook landed a few feet to my left, piercing into the pavement and dragging a chunk of asphalt back into the building. Upon viewing the retreat of the chain, my initial stunned panic was replaced with adrenaline-induced motivation. I sprinted home. I'm now back in my apartment, and though it may seem trivial given my circumstances, my phone's now fine. It had 67% of its battery when it turned back on sometime during my sprint back. During my needed downtime, I discovered that I can access the internet for the most part. I sent a couple of test messages across various websites, and you'll never understand my joy of realizing that I can consistently access Reddit, as well as a majority of messaging platforms. But ultimately, one victory and 1,000 losses admittedly doesn't do me well. I understand my situation to be peculiar to say the least, but I plead to all who see this for help. Where am I, and how do I escape?